For this lesson, we're going to be working on measures of variability. So this is the next handout in your binder behind measures of center. So measures of variability is a way of describing how spread out the data is, and it can also be described as how much the data deviates from the center. So we're also going to be talking about range. Range is a measure of variability that represents the spread in data, and it can be found by determining the least and greatest values in the data set and then subtracting the two values to determine the range in the data. So we always have to put it in order first, and then we can subtract the data. So we're going to look at number 1. Use your understanding of range to answer the questions below. So remember, range, first step is to determine least and greatest values in the data set, and then subtract the two values to determine the range. Here we have to list the numbers in order from least to greatest. As I am putting my orders in number from least to greatest, I like to make sure that I can scratch them out to make sure I do not miss any numbers. So here, Here I have all of my numbers in order. So we are actually going to be looking for the least and the greatest. So here, my greatest is 396, my least is 241. To find the range, I actually have to subtract these two. So I get 396 minus 241. So in this case, when I subtracted these two, I get my range of 155. So we're going to do the same thing for number 2. The Michaels family recorded their grocery bill each week. What is the range of the cost of their family's grocery bills? In order to solve this, I am going to take these numbers and put them in order from least to greatest. So I will start with the lowest. So now that I put them in order, my next step is to find the highest and the lowest. 176.17 would be the highest, or 97, and then 57.06. So I will take these two numbers and subtract them. 176.97 minus 57 and 06. Remember that this is asking us the cost of the grocery bills, so the range for this includes the dollar sign. So $119.91. For number 3, go ahead and take some time to put these numbers in order. So remember, whenever you are putting these numbers in order, it would be helpful for you to scratch them out as you go, so you make sure that you don't miss any one of these numbers, since there are a lot of numbers that you could potentially be dealing with. Now that we put our numbers in order, what is the next step in order for us to solve this? So you are finding the highest and the lowest of these two, and then you're going to subtract 246 minus 62. So my range for this problem is 184. This last one, the list shows the number of students in various college classes. In order to find the range, remember we have to make sure that we put these in order from least to greatest. Now that we put them in order, our next step is to subtract top number from the bottom number. In this case, we get 189 minus 19. So in this case, the range is 170. Now we're going to use basically what we just learned to find this interquartile range. So the interquartile range, IQR, is a measure of variability that splits data into 4 equal-sized quartiles, and it is represented by the middle 50% of the data. It can be found by first ordering the data from least to greatest, then we find the median, and then in the between the other pieces of data, we're going to find the median of the lower and the median of the upper quartiles, and then subtract to find the IQR. So that sounds like a lot, but once you actually see it in the data, it makes it a little bit easier to understand. So here, number 5, it says the data set below represents a different cost of cameras at the electronics store. So we have to write the data from least to greatest first to make this a whole lot easier for us. So here, go ahead and put the numbers in order from least to greatest. So now the question is asking us, what is the minimum price? In this case, the minimum price is $28. What is the maximum price? $108. So it's also asking us what the median is. So remember, to find median, we actually are going to take data from the front and the back until we run out. So here, I'm scratching off from both sides. So the median price is actually $59. Now here's where it gets a little bit different. I'm actually going to go ahead and write this again for you to see the numbers without me having it scratched off already. So I have 28, 36, 44, 59, 66, 71, and 108. Here was the median. So that means this is the first quartile. So we need to find the median of the first quartile by marking these two off and finding out that this is the median of the first half or the first quartile of this data. So this is going to be 36. Now, this third quartile is this section right here, or the higher half of the data. So we're going to mark off these data points and seeing that the quartile, or the median of this quartile, is actually 71. So in order to find the interquartile range, we had to order the data from least to greatest. We found the median, which was 59. Then we found the median of the lower and upper quartiles, 36 and 71. The last thing we have to do to find the interquartile range is going to be subtracting the third quartile from the first. So the third quartile is 71, the first quartile is 36. So when we subtract those two, we will get our IQR. So what is the IQR range? In this case, it is 35. So our question is asking us, is the IQR relatively small or large? So what does this tell you about the spread of the data? So looking at the numbers that we have, I wouldn't say that 35 is very small. It's kind of in the middle of all of these data points, considering that we know that the median price is 59. It's not that far off from it. So here, Is IQR relatively small or large? I would say the interquartile range is 35, which means that the middle 50% of the data is within $35. So the last section about this is situations that yield variability. So different situations can lead to data that has variability in data or does not have variability. So this is thinking about like data points that we can collect in real life. If we're going to have a large amount of variability or a small amount of variability really just depends on the situation or whatever story is happening. So for example, variability, the number of people at a mall at any given day. If you go to the mall, there could be hundreds of people. If you go to the mall, there could be 15, depending on what time of day you go, what day it is, etc. So that yields a lot of variability. Also, the temperature every day, it could be something different. There's kind of like a range, but if we're talking about in the morning in Texas versus the middle of the day in Texas, or like a week ago it was super cold and it's starting to warm up again, that yields a lot of variability. Things without variability would be like the number of months in a year. No matter what year you pick, it's going to be 12 months. Also, the cost of water at the school cafeteria or ice cream or whatever it is that you're buying, it's usually the same amount of money every time that you go. It doesn't change very often. So it's not a lot of variability or it's without variability. So we're going to read each situation to determine if the results will be variable or not variable. So the first one says the number of minutes during the first period class at Lamar Middle School. So let's think about this. If we're going from class to class, is the amount of minutes in our class going to change a lot depending on what day it is, depending on what class period it is? It is not going to change a lot. So this is something that's going to have no variability. The number of school holidays in 2018. So, are the number of school holidays going to change very often? No. And especially not the school holidays in 2018 because that was just 1 year. So, there's not a lot of variability. Next, the number of people in a grocery store at 9 a.m. on a Saturday. So, I would say this would have a lot of variability because let's say, for example, it's going to be Super Bowl weekend, or it's the weekend before Thanksgiving, or maybe it's just a random Saturday. We really don't know, and we don't know what the situation is, but we do know that grocery stores can be very variable. Sometimes you go and there's tons of people, sometimes you go and there's very little people. So for the next few numbers, go ahead and figure out if you think they're non-variable or if they have a lot of variability. So 9, the number of inches it rained over the past 3 weeks. 10, the number of students absent from school from the past week. 11, the number of points scored in last Saturday's football game. And number 12, the number of students performing at the halftime show. So number 9 says the number of inches it rained over the past 3 weeks. Depending on where you live, rain is very crazy and it comes and goes, and that's how it's been recently too. So this is actually a very variable piece of data. Number 10, the number of students absent from school from the past week. That is so changing all the time. People get sick, people go on vacation, things happen. So variability is high for that. 11, the number of points scored on last Saturday's football game. Well, if it was last Saturday's football game, we're only talking about one event. So the number of points scored at that one event isn't very variable at all because it's already happened. The chances of it changing are not very high. So the number of students performing in the halftime show, this is also variable because we don't know if some students had to go somewhere else or if they couldn't play because they were failing their classes. So the number of students performing in a halftime show can also be variable. This also depends on like what school you're going to because there are schools that are bigger, there are schools that are smaller, so we don't know what school exactly or what students are performing. So go ahead and start working on the homework that is attached to this. It should be called Measures of Variability so you can get more practice on this. If you have any questions with it, definitely let me know.